Totally necessary, but the thing now here, bells pealing, bells are ringing out, and that's going to be a theme today. The bell tower that leads the whole flotilla. Apparently, the Queen had to be put back on the Spirit of Chartwell a number of hundred yards because they're so deafening.
Yeah, there's 8 bells on this floating belfry. One of them, the largest, is named after the Queen. It's called Elizabeth. They're all named after senior members of the royal family, and the peal of those bells is going to signal the start of the pageant, and it will be echoed by churches along the Thames and throughout the UK and the Commonwealth as well, Eamon. So that will really be quite a sound to behold here.
You guys are at the front, aren't you, or more or less?
Yeah, we're in the first 5 rows of the pageant.
We're racing the Queen.
Yeah.
We're racing. It's going to be a sprint finish to the end. It's going to be great.
Thanks very much indeed. Let's listen to the bells. Those are the Jubilee bells, as we were telling you a little bit earlier on. The bells at the very front of the pageant will be calling out to the bells all along the River Thames, and as you can see, they've already started.
Thanks, Kay. That's lovely, putting us in the mood well and truly there. Captain Mark Windsor is with me now.
Here are the bells ready to go. Look at them in a position ready to be released. They'll play the quarter peal. Bells have just started. We'll hear them later on. It's quite a long way away from our camera position, but when they start, here we go. Let's see if we can start to hear them. I can absolutely guarantee, having heard them in rehearsal earlier on, we will hear them later on. Listen to that quarter. It's just like any village on a Sunday, just as it starts. Any minute now, we'll hear Elizabeth belled out. Listen to the largest one. She's just waiting there. That's Elizabeth. There's Philip beside her. And look at that incredible sight. Those are all the Commonwealth countries. Every boat carrying a different flag of a Commonwealth country to remind us how many nations there are, how many different countries independently choosing how they wish to be ruled, but with the Queen as their head of state or head of Commonwealth. That is so like the Canaletto painting. It's these bells now. Preparing. Look at those oars as they just...
The boat that will be leading this historic pageant is called the Belfry. It is a boat with 8 bells on board, and each bell is named after one of the senior royals, the biggest, of course, being the Queen's. Well, the Belfry weighs nearly 11 tonnes. It's going to be ringing out pretty much continuously along the way, which will be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, indeed, along the route. Bells in churches in London and all across the UK will answer it as it goes. And that is something like 1,000 bells ringing out. So if you can hear bells wherever you are in the village, you'll know exactly what's going on.
Well, the sound generated from the Belfry is going to be so loud that it is not going to need any amplification. But right on board the Belfry, leading the way in this pageant, is John Barrowman. John, how are you getting on?
I'm doing very well. A little cold, but can I say how amazing this is and how crazy this barge is? Look just above us, we have 8 of the most glorious bells that are going to be ringing out in celebration of the Jubilee. They're just starting now. It's going to get very loud. Later on in the pageant, I'm going to give a try at ringing the bells with these guys. Dick and Love and his guys in the team are experts at this. The tunes they're going to be playing are very difficult, so I'm going to give it a try a little later on. I'm going to hand back to the studio because we are now starting the River Pageant. It's going to be amazing, and it's a day where we should all be proud to be British. Listen to the bells. Here they are.
What a delight they are. Thanks ever so much indeed, John.
Fantastic. Court appeal, that is going to be, coming all the way up here on the Thames, and everyone is going to answer it as they come along. Quite a sound.
Indeed. Now,
into the middle of the River Thames. So this is the first of all of the sections of boats that are involved here today in the pageant. I'm sure that you can just hear in the background. There we are. I was just about to mention the bells. The Belfry heading up this pageant here today. And they will eventually end up as the Royal Jubilee bells in their new home at the St James Church in Garlick Hythe.
Now we can just see the beginning of what's going to be the 1,000 ships that are going to come past here.
Yeah.
That's quite a moment, isn't it?
It's, yes, a bit bigger than Strictly Come Dancing for you, don't you think?
Well, just a little bit bigger. Right now we've got, the river has so many artistic associations.
no doubt Chris's dad will be watching with a lump in his throat because he just couldn't quite get here, but yeah, he'll be a very proud man indeed.
It's such a shame he couldn't be here. Well, let's have a look on the river as well, because there are some wonderful shots of the Belfry. There's Westminster Bridge, they're all heading that way, and there's the Belfry, the Court Appeal, 8 bells, a bell for each of the senior royals, the biggest obviously for the Queen, and on board John Barrowman, who is helping them ring the bells as they come. Those bells being answered as they make their way along the shores by churches on either side of the river.
It's so important to keep that rhythm when you're ringing the bells. It must be quite hard, you know, that once you're on the water and you're bobbing around a little bit to keep it going. But they're doing a good job. Waiting for some time. I have this very expectant crowd just below the studio, and suddenly this wave of energy approaches, and the belfry, it is literally just like a floating cathedral. I mean, the sound is just magical.
Anna, you know, put this in, in history terms, this is a people's pageant now, isn't it? I mean,
that was my line. It's the people's pageant. It is the people's pageant. I mean, it's the Queen's pageant, of course, but look at it. I mean, it's the people's pageant. People on the river, people at the sides cheering. I mean, you know, the Queen, the pride which she's going to, look out over the river, see everybody waving flag. Look at all the cameras. I mean, I've
just spotted my 70-year-old.
All the bells still ringing underneath Tower Bridge, and eventually the royal party will be tying up at HMS President, who you just saw on the right-hand side of the screen there.
Those bells are really going for it the whole way along, trying to make sure that each of the churches along the way, they'll have just passed that rather mournful statue of Thomas More at Chelsea Old Church, and the bells there replied in salute to the Queen. Bells
accompanies wave after wave, this flotilla coming in 10 sections, and the barge carrying the bells, the belfry bells, now approaching Tower Bridge. The flotilla itself, most of it has covered more than the halfway mark, and the bells just coming within reach of the people who are lining the banks around the River Thames here.
And I suspect it's about to get very noisy indeed. Those bells are going to be making an awful lot of sounds, and they've been echoed all along the route by churches who've rung out their bells in recognition of what's taking place today. The crowd here have been craning their necks to get the first glimpse of the flotilla as it makes its way down. There you can see those fantastic bells that have been ringing, and the crowds of widest streets so the most amount of people can get a view. And just listen to those crowds. Something, isn't it, to see the crowds cheering and to be part of the atmosphere as those boats are rowed along. And how many times do you see that many boats? It is just like a wall of boats making their way down the Thames, isn't it? And it takes 75 minutes for them to go past any one point along this route.
Well, so many photographs will be taken of what is going to be a very special day for everybody involved. And the bells, complete with John Barrowman on board. I wonder if he's got some earplugs, because they've been going ever since we saw them at Cadogan Pier some way back. There will be peals of bells heard not just all over London but all over the country, as we mentioned at the top of the programme too.
Is giving a kind of
it is
reflection.
Now what about protocol and the significance? Because you were pointing out that the Princess Royal is actually ahead of the royal barge. Why is that?
Well, she's the master of Trinity House. Trinity House, a lighthouse authority and charity, whose headquarters are behind us here, just across on Trinity Square behind the Tower of London. Trinity House, by tradition, has the right to precede the royal yacht, and does so in British waters with one of its seagoing vessels. On this occasion, seagoing vessel.